Hi, my name is Ross Riddleston. Welcome to this Anson McCade Future series of webinars and podcasts. Today, with the help of some industry experts, we're going to be shining some light on the future of technology and business, with particular focus on diversity, skills, and working practices.
Good morning. I'm here today to speak to Gaurav Patni of Avanade around cloud transformation. Gaurav, thanks for joining us today. You're working with Avanade at the moment on cloud transformation. I suppose to start with, welcome, and it'd be good to just get a bit of a rundown about what you're up to.
Cheers. Thanks, Ross. Looking forward to talking about this topic. Still very relevant. I know cloud's been talked about for several years. At Avanade, and by the way, for those not familiar, Avanade, co-owned by Accenture and Microsoft, we get to stay at the cutting edge of technology, digital in general. Within that, my role is as a director of CIO advisory for Avanade. I get to lead transformation initiatives for clients here in Australia. Cloud topic continues to be of high interest. People still trying to make sense of what needs to be done and how. I have personally been helping at the CXO level guide what the transformation needs to be about, what the key objectives need to be, help them contextualize, personalize, and then craft the journey to cloud for clients, and that's cross-industry. I've worked with clients in retail, telecom, insurance. So happy to talk about my experiences in general and what organizations in various levels of maturity within their own journey might be thinking about. Hopefully, they get to use some of what we talk about today as part of their own journey.
Okay, I suppose to start with, you're working around sort of CIO advisory. Is cloud transformation a big topic within the CIO at the moment? Is that something that you're driving from your side, or a big conversation point within that area?
Yes, absolutely continues to be. And it's interesting, even though by title CIO advisory is what I focus on, the conversation that we end up typically having, if we progress down this journey the right way, is actually to uplift the conversation from CIOs to the head of businesses. Make it more relevant, and then CEOs, CXOs, chief operating officers, chief financial officers, they all have to be intimately involved in this journey. So even though the conversation, yes, and it's top of the mind for the CIOs, definitely, they have typically been tasked with, well, let's get stuff into cloud. They typically are provided a blanket statement. They're not sure how exactly to do that. What I've been helping with is lift the profiles of the CIOs themselves to be more relevant, for them to have a seat at the table along with the head of businesses at the CXO level, to be able to make cloud a key component of how businesses think about the business model in general. So CEOs thinking about, well, how do they make their operations more agile? The CFO is thinking about, well, where exactly to focus on CapEx versus OpEx to have the right operating model, so the way they consume IT becomes more agile, more relevant, and helps them move faster in this highly competitive business environment. So yes, top of the mind, how you progress is critical. Every organization needs to have its own craft, own path crafted. And where I've been helping is exactly to build the right journey for each organization.
Yeah. So, I mean, cloud as a concept, I mean, you'd have to have been hidden in the cloud not to have heard of cloud technology and cloud transformation, that kind of thing. And you mentioned there, the CIO saying, or the business saying, move everything to the cloud. How has cloud provision matured, and where is it at the moment?
So when we think cloud, maybe that's pretty the right place to start. When you think cloud, again, it's not just one ambiguous, it's different deployment models, a different number of providers out there. They are the hyper providers, the Amazons and the Microsofts of the world. So again, when you think the question is cloud, where exactly is cloud on the maturity curve? I think Probably the right way to approach this is the small, medium, large, different organizations have different needs. So when you think the large organizations, they actually have a much they have a wider choice. When they think about cloud or the maturity curve within cloud, they have an option of an on-prem. The on-prem still has value where it makes sense. They have an option of the vendor managed cloud, and that could be private, vendor managing the private cloud, or vendor managing maybe on an external setup, or the public cloud. And within that, whether they have an infrastructure as a service, a platform as a service, or a software as a service. I mean, all those different considerations, and they're all at different stages of maturity. So let me start with the more mature organizations first, because that provides a full landscape. So the larger organizations, their maturity within cloud, well, surprisingly in Australia, still not much. I mean, I speak to the top, the ASX 10 organizations. And an interesting example, one of the organizations I was talking to, the first of the block, the very first in Australia years ago, who decided to go with the cloud first model. They thought it was cool. They had the buy-in from the board, and they said, well, cloud sounds cool. It has all the right reasons. Why not move forward? And well, 5-6 years into the journey, they actually realized that cloud first isn't necessarily the best model. Cloud right is. And what that means is you still have to look at the workloads with the right framework. So it's important to go back to the basics and look at why do you want to move to cloud and what should be moved to cloud, and then the stuff that shouldn't be moved to cloud. Otherwise, you basically end up with your cost moving from your on-prem, and everything that you try to solve basically gets replicated in the cloud world. And that's what happened in a big way with this organization. And they're on a journey now to course correct and look at cloud with a more holistic model, with a cloud right model. And that means have an application-led approach first and foremost, which they did not do upfront. So when they started off, they thought they were mature enough, and they had enough funds, enough investments available to go full on the cloud to cloud. Well, it turns out not the right approach. They did not follow necessarily an application-led approach. They had largely an infrastructure-led approach, which causes a lot of problems. You could move stuff, lift and shift. Well, business doesn't always like that. Applications often have to be re-architected, re-engineered. So it's important from a maturity standpoint for large organizations that can afford to do this right. They have to have, first and foremost, the right operating model, a right governance model, a right financial model, the right security model. So different aspects of journey that they have to think about upfront, get the right strategy in place, and then go about do a holistic workload application inventory assessment and figure out what remediation model applies best to each, and then follow the course for each. So it's a multi-year journey. So very quickly, the small and medium organizations, they probably have maybe less variables to solve. So from their standpoint, more SaaS the better. They don't have the investments available. They don't have the financial capital available to think typically even about a private cloud option. That means they should be trying to get to a SaaS first model where possible. Focus more on business, not so much on technology differentiators. So again, happy to delve a little bit deeper on each aspect, but yeah, it's the question about maturity typically is where exactly within the deployment model, within the operating model, where exactly each organization is, and then that those are some really critical considerations.
Yeah. So I suppose if we look at the kind of smaller organizations or SME type firms, in terms of, I mean, I'd imagine there's a lower infrastructure overhead, so there'd be less costs in terms of migrating things to cloud. But is there a big benefit in cloud-driven services? I know it's a huge generalization. And do you have to be all in to recruit those benefits?
Do you have to be all in to get all the benefits of cloud? Now, again, well, So one thing again, if you were to approach cloud transformation, whether that's small, medium, or large, again, you have to think about the concept of consume to create, as in what should I consume and what should I create. For small organizations with lesser capital available, well, they still have to differentiate. If they don't differentiate from a business standpoint, they don't have products that stand out in the market. They don't have services that are stand out in the market. Obviously, they'll find it hard to survive. So the concept of consume to create, you consume whatever you can, whatever does not differentiate you. So if you think about payroll, billing, a lot of CRM, well, why create that? And it's easy now. There are a lot of options available. Utility consumption based model. So yeah, for small medium organizations, I think it should be an easy decision to whatever does not differentiate to consume that, and to focus on the core business processes, and that's where the create aspect still needs to be kept alive. They should be thinking more about platform as a service or software as a service. Think about billing, CRM, or from a SaaS standpoint, the good options available. They don't need to differentiate on that front, but they need to have platform as service so think as an example as your platform. If you were a small medium organization, let's pick up a retailer. I spend a lot of time in that front. An e-commerce pure play or a small retail shop trying to differentiate itself against the Amazon or the other pure play online retailers. How do they differentiate? Well, they've got to have the right merchandising. They've got the right assortment and product in the stores. Or if they had a platform as a service, if they had an Azure platform, they could build a contextualized, personalized merchandising offerings using that user analytics available over Azure to get better insights around their customers. They don't need to invest on an on-prem heavy infrastructure. They could simply do that off an Azure platform as a service platform. Look at your customer base, get better insights, and deliver a lightweight, contextualized promotional loyalty offering just off that, right? So that's how, again, that's an example, again, from a small, medium e-commerce, or could very well apply to other models. So consume to create is important. How best you make use of cloud, again, has to be, you still have to look at it holistically. You have to put thought behind what should I consume, what should I create.
So does that mean that, sorry to drag over, I was going to say, does that mean that IT spend is going to shift from, or is shifting from, perhaps the more traditional stuff like CRM to more marketing focused stuff like apps, UX, innovation around new stuff? So more beanbags in the IT department, perhaps.
Oh yes, absolutely. The role of the CIO itself is shrinking, and it has to. The traditional role, and that applies to where the money is going, isn't just about keeping the servers on, the lights on. This is about, well, how do you differentiate yourself and use the IT components as an enabler for achieving business differentiation. So yes, the budget is shifting, and even the skill base is shifting. The CIOs, if they're still just looking after infrastructure, well, their jobs are at risk. They have to be the chief digital officers. They also have to be the chief analytic officers. The skills apply, and that's how the budgets themselves shift. They, as a service, makes sense. Again, thinking about, well, the business as a core exists to be able to serve its customers. That's where the energy, the budget should be directed to. If the as a service model actually reduces it, if done right. So it's not always, if you don't do it right, it can actually be more expensive. But yeah, if done right, with the right operating model in place, with the right focus in place, yeah, the budgets shift towards it as a service. You start consuming IT as a service. Make sure you get the most out of it. And then when it comes to creation, the creation aspects, or build something new, something that the customers, your customer base, your demographics is looking for. And then, so the more the roles, the budgets, yeah, that's where it's shifting, and for the right reasons. Yeah.
So it sounds like the conversations you're having in terms of services, obviously everything's as a service, but the opportunity with new service creation seems to be the driver of conversation around transformation as much, if not more than cost cutting.
it's not so much about cost cutting, it's about survival. You could keep cutting costs, again, applies equally to small or large organizations. Well, how low would you go? Eventually, you have to stand out in this really crowded market. So yes, cost cutting started off as a key criteria, a key reason for thinking about cloud. No longer so. It is about differentiation first and foremost.
Yeah.
So think about we all like to talk about a customer-led transformation. Whether a utility, an energy company, a super innovation, or a bank, or a retailer, they're all always talking about a customer-led. Well, let's become more customer-focused. Well, how do you do that if you have an on-prem environment? Your infrastructure, your data is all contained in those servers. Well, most of the insights lie outside in a cloud-native environment. It does lie in the Facebook, the Instagrams of the world, the WhatsApp, and to be able to consume all of that. To be able to integrate all that knowledge, to be actually able to understand your core customer base, it is important to have a customer-focused infrastructure, and that can only happen in a cloud environment. So again, if you were to say go on an Azure or Amazon, all of that comes kind of pre-packaged, doesn't it? Right? So you have those integrators readily available to be able to make sense of what's happening in the social media, to be able to subscribe to weather APIs as an example. Integration becomes easier, and once it becomes easier, you are able to consume data the right way, to be actually able to become customer centric in the truest sense, and not just at the customer end. So again, just still answering the question about the cost cutting. It's not about cost cutting. It is about, well, how do you engage with your business partners better as well? So think of retail, e-commerce, consumer goods. They have an ecosystem to integrate to. No longer, if you think about 10, 15 years ago, it was a product-centric model. Let's think of products in our labs, let's ship it out and hope for customers to buy. It doesn't happen anymore. You have to understand and feed in customer insights into the actual product life cycle. So if you're a retailer building a new product, or consumer goods build, you have to collaboratively do that, working with your retail partners, make sure how you ship it out at the right service levels. Information sharing is key in that supply ecosystem. Again, can only happen effectively in a cloud setup. If you have most of your core data on-prem, and the suppliers, the third party, the 3PL, 4PL, they will all find it obviously hard to access all of that. Well, move it to cloud becomes much more easier. Keep it secure, share it. That actually makes the whole business model more agile, more differentiated. So again, cloud isn't just about cost; it is about differentiation and survival.
And I suppose on that point, I'm not trying to come across as a cynic, but if you're offering a big cost cutting, in terms of IT spend, the areas you talk about around increased agility rely on increased investment in product offerings and marketing and all the pieces you mentioned. Is there not a danger that retail is a good example, very, very tight in terms of margins, that they'll see the cost cutting overhead, take that, bank that, and then you've got a reduction in IP without the follow through on service? Is there a certain amount of education you need to do, or because a CIO, a CDO, a CMO, and a CEO might have very different ideas about that? Are people generalization? Are people switched on to what needs to be done, or do you have to educate people a lot?
Oh, still have to educate people. It's surprising. And like I said, in Australia, and I've had the opportunity to work for several years overseas, so can compare firsthand what's happening in the America versus UK versus Asia versus Australia. I think that the markets have different stages of maturity. I do think, if I think about US, pretty further ahead, some of these conversations are much easier to have. Amazon, classic example, it's a top-down, digitally savvy organization, and several others are following suit. Everyone's trying to emulate Amazon. Australia, yes, the conversation still happens a lot at the CIO, head of infrastructure level, which I personally always try to change that. Have been successful in several clients that I'm working with, but no, education is still needed. The business, they still, here in Australia, still gets, when I try to, as an example, through the CIO, through their sponsorship, try to engage the business, they said, why are you engaging us? Why? What do we have to do? Anything? And so it's well, then you have to basically go about the educational exercise and tell them, well, why they should, if they're not already aware about cloud, then why they should be aware of cloud. It's not just about IT components. It's not just about, it is about true business enablement. Nothing from a business strategy standpoint will come to true fruition, will lead to, the times we live in, every business model has to have a technology-enabled outcome. When you think technology, clouds right up there, it has to be top of mind for everyone. And again, when we think cloud, it's packaged up with everything that comes along with the cloud. It's the analytics, it's the operating model, the agility benefits. It's a way the organization the organization will function in the future versus how it has in the past. So yeah, the education is still needed. Unfortunately, it is. But the good examples out there. Avanade had the advantage of being able to refer across several good, successful case studies as to how the whole operating model got transformed and how business had a key role to play in the cloud transformation, and what benefits, what returns does some of the success stories elsewhere got to show for all the hard work put in. And it always resonates. But education is still needed. Not everyone's still there. They have, and it's important to be clear on what you're trying to achieve. Again, up front, it has to be clarified. Every organization has different goals. It's important as part of the education itself to tie in these goals with the specific objectives of each business unit, each business segment. What products they have to sell, and how in a cloud or digitally turned on environment, what would that look like? I think it's important to lay out the journey so everyone actually, they don't buy into it just for the sake of doing that, but they actually see real benefits coming out of it at the end. So
I suppose it must be quite challenging because it's so wide-reaching. You're essentially talking about the whole of the enterprise to lay out all the benefits. I mean, it's okay if you're siloing up parts of the business and what can be achieved in a specific department, but when you're talking about the whole enterprise, that must be quite a challenge to give a holistic view that the company can kind of digest.
It is. It requires, again, not a lightweight, but a heavy, good understanding of the industry, the exact, what are the core business functions. So, as an approach, I always like to start off with the top-down functional operating model of what looks best, or what would work best, or what has worked best elsewhere in that industry or for similar organizations. So break it up into, so I'll take the example of retail, consumer goods, where I spend a lot of time. There are layers around, the top layer focusing on customer, and that will be around customer engagement, service, sales channels. The middle layer would be around merchandising, how you build your assortment of products. The bottom layer would be around supply chain, logistics, warehouse operations. Encompassing all of that would be the data analytics layer. So I will typically approach my conversations, both with the CIO or with the businesses, as in, here's your whole business model. This is how your organization looks like. What are the different aspects of your business that need to be transformed, and how? So it's very intensive. I like to use what I call the design-led approach, which is about making sure we understand, empathize with the challenges businesses is facing, and then craft the ideation process, the prototyping process, deliver results in an agile fashion, and then make sure that what we deliver ties very closely to their business model. Actually help them deliver differentiators across each of those functional bits. And so it's industry-led, application-led, very contextualized approach. And to me, that's the only approach that actually works. If you were to approach it just purely from a technology standpoint, just look at the server footprint and say, let's save costs here, let's move some of this off. It only has a short lifespan, that journey. That will not take you too far. That will not deliver big benefits. It may be some short-term cost benefits, but not overarching business benefit. So again, it's important. Yes, it's hard work, but that's the only way it should be done. It's to have a top-down, business-led, application-led approach.
And there might be a bit of a crude question, but obviously one thing with moving everything to cloud, I mean, security must be a big concern, especially for businesses that are new to adopting wide cloud services. I mean, is security a valuable concern at the moment?
Oh yes, continues to be. When you get in security, you think about other aspects related to security like regulation, compliance, data privacy, obviously all of that. Now it's interesting. First and foremost, I mean, if you think about on-prem versus cloud, people still question. Right? They all kind of assume that it's less secure over cloud. Well, it's actually the opposite. I mean, think about let's take large organizations that actually might have 15, 20 people looking after their data infrastructure, be involved in some shape or form, or have access to the data and be able to do something with it, right? So when it comes to security breaches, it's typically it's a human element where breaches have happened. It's typically it's an individual issue typically. Well, now compare that to the cloud environment, cloud, say Azure. Well, it would be a big infrastructure, typically managing not just this client, but several hundreds of other clients, but largely automated, very well governed. They'll still have a few people, but for hundreds of thousands of, a huge amount of data, because of the automation involved, because of the investment that has gone in, because the governance that has gone in, and the security in general around those data centers being set up, you'd actually less people looking after the data. There's still risk. So I'm not saying, one of those 10, 15 people could still eventually be a cause of a data breach, but compare like to like, either the risk is low or far less, right? It's definitely not higher. So the cloud environment, you actually far more secure, generally far more secure, if not equally secure. So that aspect, again, has to be appreciated. We always like to talk about, I was talking about large organizations, think small organizations. Actually, the argument over there is far simpler. If it's a small organization, a small office, maybe 5 people, might be people sitting under a stairwell with a small desktop. And, there's a high attrition rate. Do you trust that environment versus a more secure cloud environment? I think the argument is quite easy when it comes to small medium. Cloud is definitely more secure when it comes to small medium. Large organizations could still argue about it, but yeah, so even though security is a key aspect, I think it's an argument once you have laid out these facts, once you share the facts, I think it's easily won. Having said that, one last point, cloud transformation has to include a security governance as a key aspect. You have to lay down a specific path. I'll take this example. I was talking to a retailer just a few weeks ago about, and I'm talking to the business and then hearing some of their challenges. So this organization, fairly large one, has large infrastructure, and they said, well, IT has over the years been overly restricted. Have a large on-prem footprint. They did evolve a security governance framework over the years. Well, it turns out they've always had an overly risk-averse approach for whatever reasons, almost flawed approach. That was IT's approach. They had a checklist. Well, business was more cloud savvy, or at least in principle wants more benefits to achieve out of cloud. Well, they had this application that they wanted to. Well, they thought it was an easy candidate for cloud, and that it should be a cloud-based application. Well, go to IT. IT looks at it, has red marks all over, crosses all over, because the security governance framework is overly restrictive. They turn it away, end up having the application on-prem. The business gets turned off, can do nothing about it. Well, they said, well, they're only complaining. But so again, coming on the topic of security governance, it's important for business and IT to first collectively come up with the right structure, the right governance. It should not be siloed just to IT. You have to think about why you're doing what you're doing. Question yourself, why IT should. Business should have a say in that. So again, it's a very important topic. It's very key that security as a stream within cloud transformation needs to be thought about carefully, not just with IT, but with a collaborative business involvement.
Yeah, I mean, That's a good point, actually. When talking about larger organisations, whether it's larger retailers or banks, would it be governance and security within bigger organisations that are perhaps one of the key obstacles to moving everything to a cloud? And do you see bigger companies? I suppose banks are probably the ones with most data and most cash to lose, I suppose, literally. But do you see those organisations moving over to cloud and completely being cloud enabled in the long term, or still a hybrid model?
Well, hybrid does make sense. I wouldn't say don't think about hybrid. Every organization has its own. And then there are some serious constraints around where the data resides. Obviously, still can't always fight that. So hybrid is a viable option. Large organizations, they use obviously. Well, they have to spend more time thinking about their own journey and what makes sense. When they have a wider array of choices, so it's actually fairly complex typically. But yeah, the move to cloud still makes sense. If Again, the benefits still apply. So it may not be a public cloud; it still could be a private cloud. But if large organizations, they have a huge, typically globally spread out workforce, and the benefits of say a private cloud still apply. So or a hybrid cloud still apply if they have severe data constraints. And then the different models that they have, and it's already happening. I mean, again, you look around in Australia, they are already on the move. It's really about now settling down into what makes sense and having uh, the right metrics around it is what's actually top of mind for a lot of big organization CEOs and CIOs. And so they still need help. They still need help. I still get involved in course correcting when it comes to journey to cloud for them versus necessarily cloud. They're not starting off fresh. They have been on the cloud journey for the last several years. They've tried a few things. The example I was giving earlier, this large player, first of the block, well, they're course correcting right now and putting the right metrics. For them, it's really about, well, now that the technology itself is more mature. When they started 5 years ago, we still were struggling with a lot of issues from a cloud standpoint. The cloud providers, MSPs, the large vendors was still it was still fairly new to them as well. So 5 years now to 5-6 years ahead, at this point in time, the technology is fairly mature. It's about, so the ones who are course correct and now need to think about, have they gone out about the journey right, and are they okay to continue on the journey for the next 5-10 years? And having talked to several of them, I do realize that course correction is very critical. Hybrid as a choice especially has emerged as a very stable, viable offering. It wasn't so much a viable offering a few years ago. It is now. As from Avanade's standpoint, we actually talk about how best to make use of a hybrid infrastructure. So yes, so it's definitely there. I do see a lot of action on the from a hybrid standpoint. I think a lot of organizations, the big ones, will definitely take it more seriously in the coming months and years.
Yeah, and on that point, actually, so from a personal perspective, using a mobile phone and having cloud services there, you kind of have to buy into an organization's ecosystem. So if it's iPhone, it might be Microsoft, might be Google, and you tend to kind of be stuck in that ecosystem. Is that the same? Is that the same with cloud services? That once you go the Microsoft route, that's the route, for example, that you take for all services. And going on from that, is there a danger that having a big three or big four, if you like, whoever that might be, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, up and coming, I believe, but having that big three before, does that mean that it might come to the cost of competition within wider service providers around technology if data's in one place? Sorry, it's a convoluted question, but if a company's in one ecosystem, then I'd imagine it would be harder for third parties to get in on the action.
It's but not so much. Again, when it so yeah, the options aren't too many. So you're right. I mean, if you think about the large, stable cloud providers, someone you can trust for the next 20, 30 years, financially stable, someone with the right, enough infrastructure in place to be a going concern and to be able to respond to the challenges and to constantly innovate, to invest in R&D. And all those aspects, yeah, there's a handful of choices, more than four. But yeah, think about Google, Amazon, Microsoft, obviously, and Oracle, SAP. They're all sales forces. They're all investing as well. Still a good enough set of choices just within the top bracket. And a lot of large organizations typically invest in more than one, and it's easy enough to do that. As in, well, not it requires a bit of governance around it. You still need a cloud management platform solution to be able to function seamlessly across different clouds, to be able to manage your resourcing across different platforms fairly well. So large organizations can still do that, and within say 4 or 5 cloud providers, be able to by creating a choice internally, be able to keep them competitive against each other and still have the benefit of a large provider or set of large providers. But it's working with several large organizations that are currently doing that. And we're actually trying to solve the single pane of glass problem for them. They already have multiple choices. How do they manage all these different 4 or 5 key providers seamlessly? So they have those challenges to solve, but it will get solved. We are currently helping them solve it, and it does not necessarily lock them into one provider. Gives them the benefits, and if you think about, every provider does have the names that are took. They all have benefits attached to what they have to offer. It's fairly clear. In fact, I mean, I'm always surprised. I talk to clients, and they can see that too. The providers focusing on a platform as a service play, the other providers focusing on infrastructure as a service play. The others which focus more on SaaS, right? So it's typically the choices are fairly well laid out. It's what the organization wants to achieve is what's critical. So you may invest in one provider more versus the other, and that comes down to what benefits you're seeking to achieve. Now, I would say, from a maturity of cloud standpoint, where the most action is beginning to happen and will happen as every organization or even as the providers themselves mature, is on the PaaS, platform as a service side of things. That's where the most benefits are expected to be achieved. So the providers who are focusing more on that are the ones that will typically stand out. They will end up having the most share when it comes to the cloud budgets. And same for organizations. If they're, and it's not easy versus IaaS, lift and shift, move stuff, maybe some quick savings, easy enough to do that. SaaS also is relatively easy. You just, you're reaching end of life cycle from a CRM standpoint, a billing standpoint, simply go to SaaS and stay there. It's a platform as a service, not as easy to achieve, but once you achieve it, that's where the most benefits are, because it actually helps you get the most from analytics standpoint, from agility standpoint. It helps you actually build stuff of a PaaS, and it actually, benefits that give you true differentiation. So that's why I'm personally spending a lot of time helping organizations understand what best to do from a PaaS standpoint, and what providers out there can potentially help them most from a PaaS standpoint.
Okay, so actually that's an interesting point. So if traditionally a company had its own platforms, and there'd be developers, architects implementing and supporting that, how do you see skill sets shifting if the platform's as a service? Is it around creating opportunities with that platform? Now, how would a platform architect arm themselves for the future? You could look into your crystal ball.
There is a huge shift in the skills required. Obviously, it's a cloud native environment. If you think about cloud itself, isn't that new? That means when you go out and are trying to recruit someone with the right skill set, well, you wouldn't have people with 10, 15 years of experience. No, it's someone who has spent maybe 5 years, but doing exactly the right set of things. So think of analytics on a PaaS platform. It's the well, the skill set is vastly different from someone who has just worked on, say, an RDBMS technology. They may have 20 years of experience, but vastly different from someone who has just worked for 5 years, but on Python, on some of the new age, on a big database or cloud-based analytics platform. So it's an interesting shift. Again, organizations looking to hire skills. They first of all, it's important that that they're looking at it with the right lens, obviously. They have to be willing to experiment, I guess. They have to be willing to invest in someone with just a 5-6 experience, but then help them grow within the organization and then do contextualized bits just as to what's relevant from this organization standpoint. So it's a huge shift. Yeah, workforce. I mean, everyone out there has to be, both the employers and the employees. I guess they're both trying to make sense of the shift. So no great crystal ball. It's and every day the landscape shifts. Every day there's something new out there. When you think AI, I mean AI, how quickly it has progressed, how quickly it has matured. The skills in that space, it's mind-boggling. I mean, it's and how you apply that obviously becomes more critical than just knowing the core software programming behind it. It is important from a skill standpoint to identify and to the folks who can actually apply the basic, the core understanding of software programming to new use cases. All right, and then that's a creative skill set that I don't know if it was as critical 5-10 years ago. It is more critical now. It is about creative uses of technology, still making the core software programming in a cloud native environment, but quickly able to apply to interesting use cases that deliver the best ROI. And that's where the skill shift is really happening.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned design thinking approach yourself, I think earlier, and that seems to be a key shift across. That phraseology probably comes from probably designers would object to it, but comes from design, product design essentially, in the historically. But that's come into the boardroom now, and it's interesting to see how technology is an enabler for a new way of thinking. Whereas, if I thought of cloud, if you said to me cloud a couple of years ago, I would think storage, a few things of a service. But it's interesting to see the fundamentals of how that's changing, right now, kind of thing, in terms of how companies are working. How long do you think until we reach a level that you'd call mature in this space? Big question.
Well, we have to first think about what would maturity look like. I mean, is it maturity from operating model standpoint, as in organizations knowing exactly, having the right structure, governance in place, their business, their IT working seamlessly together to move bits to cloud where relevant, or keep them, or at least analyze, assess them with the right framework. Like that maturity, that isn't too far away, as in, because the technology is there. It's not simply about making sense of that. I think we only, again, regionally different. I still stay in close touch with the mates in the US. I see some of the organizations there far ahead. Australia is still catching up culturally, but it will be there in the next couple of years, where we'll have as an example, say DevOps as a cultural aspect. It's still fairly new, but I think in a couple of years we'll be at a point where how you develop, how you move, how you operationalize will be fairly streamlined. So yeah, that bit's maybe a couple of years away. No, but there's a different way of answering the maturity question, and that going back to the PaaS bit. Like I said, cloud as a platform, IaaS has been around for a bit. It's reaching maturity to a good extent. Same for SaaS. Know why or where to go for SaaS, where to consume, right? So I think some of those things are easier to understand. PaaS, it'll still be a few years. I would say maybe 5-10 years before you actually see organizations being mature enough to use PaaS to its best potential, to be actually able to weave it into how they think, the core fabric of the organization itself, right? And then so that's still a few years away, just because it's hard. It's hard both culturally. It's hard for organizations to think about what exactly to put in PaaS, or even why. I mean, they're stuck with legacy applications, legacy infrastructure, legacy ways of doing things. It's not easy to simply turn it off and move to a new way of thinking on a platform as a service. That will take a few years. Just not just say even elsewhere it's happening. I mean, it's taking a while, but I think the maturity just from, I think maybe 5 or 10 years from now, we can say if they're doing things the right way on PaaS, we'll say the cloud has matured enough. Now it's part of how an organization behaves. And again, one other additional aspect of that is the business involvement. I think we'll be truly mature when business has as much as say. Well, it's no longer differentiated from IT, but they co-house and they're collaboratively working. And IT in its traditional sense probably would not exist when all of this is mature. It will just exist because business will have IT, they will have self-service available. They'll be doing a lot of bits that they currently do using IT on their own. That means IT's role would have morphed into business and vice versa. And you would be using technology as a service in most cases. That means a mature cloud environment would be about seamlessly, when not thinking technology separately, but just thinking as part of your business process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Gaurav, I've kept you talking. Final question. What technical innovation that's coming up excites you the most?
Technical innovation that excites me the most? Well, it is within the AI context. I mean, AI isn't new, but what's about to happen, AI is it's hugely transformational. It affects all of us. It affects countries and societies. And it'll be for good. So not trying to sound as if the Armageddon is coming. It's more, but it's coming. AI, the potential it has is mind-boggling, and we only just now, we've been talking about for several years. I mean, if you think about Hollywood, the movies have been out there for several decades. I think we've reached a point where it's actually beginning to become real. I work with, and then when you think AI, some of the simpler or more achievable use cases, intelligent automation is one. Well, so I have a lot of conversation these days with what's possible from an intelligent automation standpoint. Again, the true benefits of intelligent automation is still a couple of years away, or even how they put it. But the journey to intelligent automation starts with something like, say, an RPA, robotics process automation, or bits around, take bits of the business processes. So that bit is exciting because it's actually beginning to pay off. I've been in an organization that spend every day, and this is an example of a retail organization. I spend time looking at folks coming in at 8 a.m. every day, spending 6-7 hours, taking in bits of information from 10-15 spreadsheets, compiling them into one spread. So they have to, say, come up with a new promotional offer to put new seasonal products out on the shelf, or new products themselves. Think about they're spending so much, wasting so much time in unproductive work that can easily be shifted to, say, an RPA-based process, remove that inefficient, unproductive time, free up the time, and these people can get back to the families at 6 p.m. or even earlier, and versus staying around just to complete this monotonous everyday task. So, I mean, there's some real benefits to be achieved out of automation. If you think just RPA, as we progress down, say, a more machine learning based, AI based intelligent automation, the technology is there. In a couple of years, we'll actually start to see true benefits where a lot of the mundane, monotonous, unproductive tasks will be shifted to either robots or machine learning based processes. We'll have more time available to do more creative bits. So, well, depending on who you talk to, some people are absolutely scared of that happening, as in, well, what will happen to my job? But the other way to look at it is, well, we can no longer be focused on unproductive tasks as a society. We need to be getting rid of unproductive tasks, reskilling ourselves, obviously. And there's plenty to do in the AI, machine learning, intelligent automation world. It'll just look different. The task will be different. It'll be about having the right framework. It'll be about the focus more on business now, not so much on these easily automated technology-related tasks. So the shift will happen. I find that exciting. I like to stay ahead of the curve and see that happen and help organizations achieve that balance. Help the staff also achieve that balance. Change management will be a key aspect. So it's one of the top 2 or 3 things that excites me. Helping organizations understand the role that AI will have to play, the role that the change management, what change management aspects are required to keep their employees on this journey and not and help them evolve, help them grow. I mean, all those are really exciting, and yeah, love doing that. It's not easy. Staying ahead of the curve, staying cutting edge of technology, making sense of this all. It is a view into the crystal ball, but I find that exciting, and I hope wider people out there, employees out there, worried, actually shift the perspective and start all getting equally excited about it and embracing the change.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting. Very interesting to see what we're saying in 3 years' time, looking back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Gaurav, thank you very much for your time. It's been really, really interesting insights into cloud transformation and what it can enable. Maybe we'll follow up with another topic around AI in the future. But thanks for your time today. If you'd like to find out more about Gaurav or anything he's been talking about today, follow the links after this. Gaurav, again, thank you. Thanks for taking the time today to talk to us, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you, Ross. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.